Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to learn about GraphQL with Springboot. Let's get started. So this is the agenda we're going to cover today. Let's deep dive. So GraphQL is a query language for APIs and runtime for executing those queries with the data retrieved from any data source. Like it could be a relational database or NoSQL database. So it also provides a declarative and efficient data fetching through which we achieve a better performance. The main advantage of GraphQL is it's client-driven, which means the client has the control of what data they want to consume, rather than following a traditional way of consuming the entire response payload and filter out what data to be processed or displayed to the user. So the GraphQL uses a schema file and type system, so which follows a schema definition language. So this is the crux of the GraphQL. So here we specify the domain data, like what data to be queried or persisted as part of the API contract. So we will explore more about this in a sec. And the next one is the architecture of traditional RESTful endpoint and the GraphQL. So as we already know, the RESTful endpoint represents a RESTful API represents an endpoint for each HTTP methods like get, post, put, delete, etc. So for each HTTP method, we have an endpoint. So we're going to call them separately with the different URI based on the HTTP methods. But for GraphQL, just one endpoint, which is used for all operations, all CRUD operations like create, read, delete, and update. So let's move on. So this is the difference between GraphQL and REST endpoint. So the first one is the architecture. As we already saw, GraphQL is client-driven, but RESTful endpoint is server-driven. And the GraphQL is organized in terms of the schema and type system, but RESTful API is endpoints. And GraphQL supports operations like query, mutations, and subscription, but REST supports the CRUD operations. So in terms of data fetching, GraphQL can specify what data to be retrieved, but for REST endpoint, it's fixed data. And file uploading, currently GraphQL doesn't support any file uploading, but RESTful supports file uploading. In terms of caching, currently GraphQL doesn't support any caching inbuilt, but we can achieve through different library. But RESTful endpoint supports caching. So in terms of use case, GraphQL is used for mobile apps or any complex microservices system. And RESTful endpoint, it's a traditional web services used across all the firms. So yeah, so these are the advantages of GraphQL. So the first one is it's faster, as we already learned. It's a client-driven and doesn't have to process the entire response payload, rather query what is required. And it's no overfetching or underfetching because it's fetched through query. And the last one is a one endpoint. So GraphQL supports just one endpoint, which is used for query, mutation, and subscription. And as part of this demo, we're going to cover the query and mutation. So let's deep dive there. Yeah, so this is the schema file used for this demo. So as we can see, so this schema supports query and mutation operations. So, and we also specify what function is supported as part of the query. So here we have two queries. One is to get all the performance data, which responds as a list of performance response. And the next one is a performance data with the ID as an input. So for that particular input, it's going to retrieve a list of performance data. So the performance data has these data sets. So out of these types, the consumer can query what do they want to see. And this is another response on all performance data response this data. The next one is a mutation type. So as part of this mutation, we have one function, which is to create the performance data, which takes the symbol as an input and the exclamation makes it as mandatory. So when we specify the symbol, it's gonna fetch the data and it's gonna persist into database and respond with the performance response. So the performance response is nothing but the ID and the data. And the last one is input type. So here we can specify if there is any special object as an input. Here we can specify them. So, okay, so let's look at the APIs. Okay, so as we already saw, just a one URI used for both query and mutation. So let's check the mutation first. So we're gonna specify the symbols. So what symbol? Let's specify Microsoft and Meta. Okay, so this got persisted and we specified to display only the ID. So let's get this ID and check what's the performance. So here we can query what data we want to see. So I just want to see close value. So let's query that. I can get that. And I can also specify I want to see the symbol as well. So with the symbol also I can get it. And also I can say open. Well, can also get that. So like we already mentioned, so we can just query what we want to consume. Irrespective of the fixed data set, we can query as part of the GraphQL functionality. So yeah, so that's about query and mutation. So let's look at the database, what we just persisted. So what we persisted is Meta and Microsoft. Yeah, so this is the data we persisted just now. And out of these responses, we can just query what data we want to see. So this is very useful in terms of functionalities like if we build a chart, performance chart of any symbol, and if user wanna navigate each day and see what's the value on that particular day. So in terms of fetching the data from database, the consumer doesn't have to go through all the data points. All they want to see is the close value and the symbol and the date. So only these three endpoints is enough to build a chart. So the all other attributes are unnecessary. So consumer has the capability to query what they want. So that's the advantage of GraphQL. So that's all we have in this video. Please comment what to cover next. Yeah. Thanks.